Hello, welcome to Watan الكرامة News Service, and we start our news bulletin today from Farid Akir in Libya. The Arab-Libyan armed forces launched an intensive airstrike on several terrorist Daesh group sites in Wadi Budahka al-Zahir al-Hamir west of Derna. The commander of Aymar, Colonel Saad Aqoub, said al-Zahir al-Hamir district witnesses violent clashes with heavy weapons between the armed forces and the terrorist Daesh group. He noted that al-Zahir al-Hamir district is one of the most important strategic locations, and taking control of it prevents the terrorist group's operations in Ain Marra city. The commander of the security patrols in fighting districts of Derna city, an investigation officer in Bawabat Lamnouda, Colonel Adel Tayyar, said that the armed forces succeeded in capturing 7 members of terrorist Daesh group in Ras al-Hilal district. Atayil stressed that 2 other elements of terrorist Daesh group were killed during violent clashes that the district witnessed during armed forces attempts to repel an armed attack launched by terrorist groups elements in a bid to achieve progress in Ras al-Hilal district. Shahat Security Directorate arrested one of the terrorist elements in Shahat city east of the country. The chief of Shahat Security Directorate Support Force, Hassan Bou Karim, said the arrested militant was referred to the military police to continue investigation process and take necessary procedures. Moreover, Bou Karim stressed that the force succeeded to arrest 2 residents of Ras al-Hilal possessing quantities of narcotics, a gun, and number of bullets. Still in Libya, Prime Minister Abdullah al-Thani said recent repercussions that served witnesses as a result of terrorist Daesh group's takeover of that city is regarded as a great complicity for Fajr Libya's militias with this terrorist group. He said this clearly appears through the fact of Sirte was fully delivered to terrorist Daesh groups without any resistance. This came during a press conference held by the government to focus on latest developments in the country. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abdullah al-Thani condemned the feeble position of international community towards what is happening now in Libya, warning of risk of an outbreak of these terrorist groups in other Libyan cities. Spokesman for House of Representatives Faraj Bou Hashim announced that the Chief of Parliament, Chancellor Aguila Saleh Quaid, will visit the Russian capital Moscow to discuss the Libyan crisis in the country and conduct consultations with the Russia side on joint cooperation to combat terrorism. Meanwhile, Bou Hashim stressed that the Parliament formed a committee to discuss Libya's reconstruction and began to remove the devastation of war and continued fighting. He added that the Parliament held an agreement with major international companies to begin the reconstruction process. Moreover, Bou Hashim said that the Parliament discussed means of recovering Libyan assets abroad, supporting capabilities of the Arab Libyan armed forces, and beginning to build a new Libya. Deputy Prime Minister for Services Affair Abdessalam al-Badri described remarks of the UN Special Envoy to Libya, Bernardino Leon, in which he said Libya is on the average of bankruptcy as political. Al-Badri noted at a press conference held by the interim government that Libya possesses a great assets of money in foreign banks, in addition to owning investment assets exceeding $60 billion. In the meantime, he stressed that the government will call on the international community to cancel some of the unfair resolutions by releasing some assets that were frozen abroad. Efforts to bring Yemen's warring factions together to discuss the conflict have made some progress. Officials said today as warplanes from a Saudi-led coalition mounted more airstrike against Houthi group. Neighboring Oman is trying to move them to months of fighting that has killed nearly 2,000 people by mediating talks between U.S. officials and representatives of the Houthi group. Political sources in Oman, Yemen's eastern neighbor, confirmed today Thursday that diplomats were brokering the talks between Houthi and U.S. officials at a hotel in the capital, Muscat, aimed at finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Independent politicians in the Yemeni capital, Sana'a, said the talks have succeeded in narrowing gaps between the Houthis and exiled government to pave the way for eventual United Nations-backed negotiation in Geneva. And now from Iraq, the United Nations said it would be forced to shut down almost half its aid operations in Iraq without an immediate injection of new funds at a time when a humanitarian crisis triggered by terrorist Daesh group insurgent is intensifying. Liz Grant, the UN humanitarian coordinator for Iraq, said the number of people in need of assistance continues to increase as the resources to help them dry up, and she forecast a summer of this content. Grant added that the number of Iraqis in need of humanitarian assistance could reach 10 million by the end of the year, from around 8 million people at present. A renewed terrorist Daesh group's offensive in western Iraq has displaced tens of thousands of people over the past month, and many more are likely to flee fighting as Iraqi security forces and parliamentary groups act to regain lost ground. Iraq's Prime Minister of Defense Khalid has received the British ambassador to Iraq, Frank Baker. During the meeting, Obaidi discussed with Ambassador Baker bilateral relations and support provided by the United Kingdom's government to Iraq as part of the international coalition against terrorist Daesh group. The Iraqi Ministry of Defense said Obaidi met with the U.S. President Barack Obama's envoy charged with building the coalition against extremist Daesh group. A press release issued by the ministry said Al-Obaidi received retired General John Allen at his office at the Ministry of Defense and discussed with him support provided by the U.S. administration and member states of the international coalition to Iraq. In his remarks to the press at the end of the meeting, General Allen emphasized the commitment and firm support of the U.S. administration and the international coalition for Iraq and to government of Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi. Villagers residing along the Indian border in Punish district of northern state of Jammu and Kashmir feared for their lives as Pakistani Rangers broke a ceasefire today. Local media reported that Pakistani troops violated a 2003 ceasefire truce twice today. They fired upon Indian post in Punish. The Indian army killed 4 militants during a 60-hour gun battle in Jammu and Kashmir following an attack on a military base after the men crossed the border from Pakistan. During the lull in fighting along this stretch of border after the 2003 ceasefire till 2014, villages grew on both sides, with brick buildings replacing and huts and schools and wedding halls opening close to checkpoints, but that peace is now shattered. Villagers living in the Indian side of the line of the control, LOC, have been left helpless with the firing that has been on and off since last year. And now from Russia. Russia said today a UN Security Council resolution allowing for the use of force in the Mediterranean to stop gang smuggling migrants must define the powers of an EU naval mission precisely to win Moscow's backing. The European Union has agreed a mission to target gangs bringing people from Libya as part of a plan to deal with the influx of migrants to the bloc, but requires a UN mandate to be able to intervene in Libyan territorial waters. Speaking alongside Italian Foreign Minister Paolo Gentiloni, whose country is one of the migrants' most popular destinations, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the two countries were interested in finding a solution to the problem. Lavrov was cautious about any resolutions that is proposed under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which allows the use of force to restore the international peace and security. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met his Italian counterpart Gentiloni in Moscow today to discuss bilateral relations between the two countries as well as the burning issues of the international agenda. Gentiloni told a news conference after the talks that he was confident they want to continue their work in Russia and search for the new opportunities. Speaking alongside Gentiloni, Lavrov said Russia was disappointed with Europe's reaction to its move to ban dozens of European officials from visiting Russia. Moreover, Lavrov noted that when the EU have introduced their sanctions against 150 Russians, Russia did the same thing, but towards a much smaller number of citizens of the European Union member states. Now from Ukraine, senior UN human rights officials said today a separatist conflict in eastern Ukraine is revealing increasing evidence but not yet conclusive large proof of Russian state involvement. Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights Ivan Simenkov told a new conference in Geneva that he is speaking about increasing inflow of unofficial fighters and increasing evidence that there are also some Russian servicemen involved in fighting. However, Russia denies Western accusations that is backing pro-Russian rebels with arms and troops. If Moscow is proven to be a party to the war, it would drag Russia into allegations of war crimes and potentially trials at the International Criminal Court, which Ukraine's foreign minister has said Kiev wants to join. Without not to declare Russia a party to the conflict is the domain of the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, which is the guardian of the Geneva Convention setting down the rules of war and considered a reference in the United Nations. African leaders meeting in Tanzania to discuss a political crisis in Burundi triggered by the president's plan to run for a third term call for the postponement of elections by at least a month and a half. Protests erupted in Burundi last April in response to President Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to run for another term in June 26 polls, a move critics say violates the constitution. The heads of state of Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, which together with Burundi and Rwanda from the East African Community EAC Common Market attended the summit. They were joined by South African President Jacob Zuma. The leaders had previously called for the vote to be postponed to create the right conditions for voting, but to be held within Nkurunziza's current mandate that ends in August. Nkurunziza didn't attend the meeting, and he was represented by the country's foreign minister Aline Naimetev. And now, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina entered the race for 2016 Republican presidential nomination today, bringing a loud critic of President Barack Obama's foreign policy into the White House contest. Graham, which is 59 years, announced his candidacy at an event in his hometown of Central South Carolina. A fierce critic of Obama's nuclear negotiations with Iran, Graham was one of 47 Republican senators who signed a letter of warning in March to the leadership in Tehran, a highly unusual intervention into U.S. foreign policy making. Graham said the U.S. needs to set up as a fight against extremists abroad to prevent militias attacking America as they did on September 11, 2001. He is the 9th Republican to declare he is running for the White House in a field that includes better-known Republicans such as U.S. Senators Ted Cruz of Texas and Marco Rubio of Florida. My audience, that is a wrap-up of our top stories for today. For much more, you can check our website www.watanalkarama.tv. Thanks for being with us. Thanks. My greeting.